grateful.
All right. Hello, everybody. Sorry for the delay. We've just been working through some technical difficulties. Just making sure we've got a couple of people on here. Great. All right. Wonderful. As people just start popping on, if there's any questions or comments during the presentation, just pop them in the chat box, and Mick and Eddie and Mark will work to answer those questions at the end of the webinar. Thanks so much for joining us today for our second webinar of the Tasmanian Timber webinar series. Today's session, we're going to aim to deepen specifiers' understanding of certification processes and sustainable forest management in Tasmania. We have Tasmanian Timber expert Mick Lee. He'll be presenting for us today. Mick's a leader in the timber industry with over 30 years of experience and also answers our free expert helpline. We're also very fortunate today to have Eddie Willis and Mark Leach. They're from Wood Connect, and they'll be giving us a deeper dive into all things certification and sustainability. Mark Leach has more than 40 years experience in the broader industry, including designer making, special timbers, private forests, and a focus on sustainability and forest management and the supply chain. He's the owner and managing director of Bruckner Leach Consulting and Wood Connect, Australia's largest group chain of custody supporting the Tasmanian hardwood sawmilling industry. We also have Eddie Willis, who's initially from New Zealand and has now been working for Forestry Tasmania for 23 years in forest management and fire management. He has been working with Mark at Bruckner Leach for 5 years as a certification manager. Like I said at the beginning, as we work through the webinar, please pop any questions into the chat box and we'll work to answer those questions at the end of the presentation. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I'll pass things over to you, Mick.
Thanks, Morgan. Yeah, no, lovely. Eddie, if you want to throw up the next slide, please. Yeah, look, just again, as with all of our webinars, you know, it's supported by the Tasmanian Timber Promotion Board. The Tasmanian Timber Promotion Board's a corporate body established by an act in 1970 and fully supported by both STT, government and the industry. It researches into the use of wood and its derivatives, sawn timber, markets timber and timber products, disseminates information. The board is funded by a government-imposed levy collected from the sale of all Crown saw logs, and that is all Crown saw logs, to support those who use Tasmania's beautiful timbers and showcase the companies and groups and produce that sell it. So just a little bit of background. Tas Timber is very active, very supported by the sawmilling companies in Tasmania. And why we've asked Mark and Eddie along today is because they handle the group certification, which they'll talk about further down the track, for the whole of the Tasmanian industry. Again, sustainability, and I must say this, Tasmania has over 800,000 hectares of sustainable production forest, of which only 1% is harvested annually. That's 1%. Our sustainable hardwood forestry is thriving in our supply chain and there's a long-term future. We have sustainable Tas oak available to architects, specifiers, joiners and manufacturers. You know, it is here. It's here to stay. We have some horizons, some windows that Mark and Eddie will talk about for timelines. So I'd just like to now hand over to Eddie and Mark to just take us through the remainder of the slides. What we're talking about today is the Tasmanian Forest Practices System certification. What is it? How does it work? Sustainability and the Wood Connect Group certificate. So I'll hand over to you, Eddie.
Thanks, Mick. Well, first up, the Tasmanian Forest Practices System, it's like Mick said, it's respected nationwide. It's run by the Forest Practices Authority. We work on the Forest Practices Code. Now, the code is actually sort of the code of practice for all forest operations in Tasmania. It's tenure blind, public and private land, as well as native forest and plantations. Now, the forest practices system also works under our regional forest agreement, so the RFA. Now, there's some people saying it gives us an exemption from the Federal Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. That's technically not correct. It's the same level of protection that's required under both. It just means that we don't need to get approval for every forest practices operation in Tasmania from Canberra. So that was just there to give the industry certainty for the next 20 years, and it's got a review every 5 years. So the Tasmanian Forest Practices System is aligned with the EPBC Act, so it's the same level of protection. So it's the Forest Practices Authority is governed by a board. The board is independent and they employ staff, so there's specialists in their field, experts in botany, geology, etc., etc., and they provide guidance and advice to forest practices officers when they're preparing forest practices plans. So forest practices plans are the instrument that provides the prescriptions to protect the special values that may be in any harvest area that we've got. Anne Tudor did a very good talk on the Original Thinkers podcast. So yeah, have a look at that one. Okay, certification. There are two certification schemes that operate in Australia. So the first is the Forest Stewardship Council, or FSC, and the second is Responsible Wood. Responsible Wood was previously known as the Australian Forestry Standard, or AFS. That is actually recognised globally by the PEFC, which is the Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification. So what certification does is it provides independent verification of the management systems that we've got. So it's the same level of rigour in every country. In practice, each country, though, does have unique forest and situations that are taken into account with national risk assessments and that sort of thing. And both schemes also, the way they work rather is they have certification bodies. Now, a certification body is actually the organisation that gives a manager that certification. So they come and do an external audit, and they are the ones that sign off against the standard to say whether or not they've passed or not. So it's completely independent.
Eddie, can I just jump in there? You just mentioned that there was similar situations worldwide for the PEFC. Do they all have to meet the same level of standard, or is there differing standards from country to country?
PEFC has an international standard or a meta standard, but yeah, each country can have their own variations based on their regulations. In the US, for example, they've got the SFI system. So yeah, they can have their own sort of tweaks to it to allow for local variations and situations.
Thank you.
Yeah, so with certification, we've got two levels of certification. We've got forest management certification this is for both PEFC and FSC. So forest management certification provides for certified wood from the forests to the first customer. So logs from a certified forest are basically produced as 100% certified. And this forest management covers all aspects of forestry, including like policies and procedures, planning. We've got continual improvement, as well as the biodiversity requirements. It covers employment conditions such as modern slavery, all the legal requirements such as safety, as well as fire management and road construction. So it's everything involved in forest management. And in Tasmania, there are some private companies that certify private forests, and most of the main landowners or forest managers have their own estate as well, such as Sustainable Timber Tasmania, Reliance Foraco, and so on. So after forest management, the next thing you've got is chain of custody. And chain of custody covers all the steps in the supply chain from those raw logs to the customer right through to the end user, to the consumer. The important point with chain of custody is that each person in the chain, each organisation needs to be certified. So they are also independently verified to prove that if you end up with a certified timber at the end, it's come from certified forest, and we can trace that timber right back through the supply chain. So they also have an external audit and an internal audit as well. We'll talk about project certification, Mark.
Yeah, another aspect to certification is whole product certification. And perhaps a globally classic example would be the more recent reconstruction of the Notre Dame roof structure. So over 80% of the wood inputs for that massive project came from 175 independent PFC certified forests processed through 35 PFC certified sawmills. And they'd gained a whole of project PFC certification. That is available for build in Australia, construct certification at the project level. It's just another opportunity that does exist.
So, Mark, if I can just jump in there before we go on to the next slide on certification, would that apply to our stadium, for instance, where we could get multiple PFC or FSC or certified materials?
Most definitely. Yep, that could be our Notre Dame.
Yeah, lovely. No, seriously, and it's just a bringing together to make sure that all the material that's sold or sourced through Tasmania is actually certified. So, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, every hardwood sawmill in Tasmania of any significance, even down to quite small operations, are all chain of custody certified. So they're producing certified output.
So when I see that in one of the larger chain stores where it has a chain of custody sticker on it, we can actually chase that timber right back through to, you're saying we can chase it right back through to the forest?
Yes, we can. We can get it back to most probably the day's cut, but definitely to the coops that it came from.
Lovely.
Okay, so as we sort of said there, certification is passed on through what we call a claim. And you'll see when you're looking at timber, it'll have a claim of certification as to what the scheme is and its level of certification. So logs can come as 100% and they can go down to 70% depending on what we're looking at there. But the mantra is that the claim you buy is the claim you sell, and you buy and sell that same claim. So claims are passed on either on paper documents or stickers on the product, or they can be passed on electronically. Some products such as furniture or paper, they may end up with a mix of different types of wood, and you might see it down to about 70% certified where it's been mixed with what we call either controlled wood or controlled sources, depending on what scheme you're looking at. So that's wood that they've bought in that isn't from a certified forest, but it has been checked for the main issues such as conflict timber, legality of harvest, modern slavery, and to ensure that the wood hasn't come from land clearing. And with Tasmanian timber, almost all has some form of certification. So there may be some small areas that are unable to be certified for plantation if they were cleared after 31st of December 2006. But the vast majority would be certified. And in Tasmania, you can get FSC and responsible wood certification. Native forest at the moment only carries responsible wood or PFC certification, and some plantations carry FSC certification as well. So yeah, certification, it works to, I should say, just by continual improvement, so raising the bar. And Tasmania actually has a very high level in terms of environmental and sustainability management. So the level to get the FSC certification or the next level is even higher. So some countries may be able to get certification on native forests quite easily, but because we have such a rigorous system already, it's can be quite difficult.
And that becomes part of the audit, Eddie?
It does, Mike.
The actual verification of improvement?
Yes, continual improvement is a part of both standards. So we need to be able to demonstrate that the systems are improving continually, so as we go. Okay, special species. So do you want to talk about, this is your ball, Mark?
Yeah, right. Yeah. special species or species that produce special timber, as I would prefer, are tend to be smaller trees in the forest, mostly understory, unless it's a thinner native forest that has dominant myrtles, or perhaps a blackwood forest that's definitely dominated by blackwood that might have come from the blackwood swamps that are very carefully managed. Often the wood that we're producing has come from arisings from harvesting in wetter eucalypt forests. But these are highly valued. One of the some of the iconic ones would be Tasmanian blackwood, which is readily available through retail outlets within Australia, and commonly processed and produced by Britain Timbers, one of our strong stalwart members in this state. Huon pine has typically been salvaged up until recently from an historic logging area known as Tipukana, and that's a recovery operation. There are opportunities too through what's remnants of the historic harvesting, which was Huon piners, so people that would go deep into the forest and fall into deep gullies, all the trees into deep gullies, and they would come out eventually over time, sometimes many, many years, decades at least, through torrential rainfall and flooding, and there'd be stockpiles that would come in and be managed through Macquarie Harbour and other places. And this occasionally that happens in extreme events where you can still find a log that's got an original piner's log mark on it. So, you know, the use of special timbers in Tasmania is part of our cultural heritage, predominantly coming from areas where we do have existing wet forest management, and particularly the purposed management of our blackwood swamps, which is very specific and sustainable forest management.
Can I also throw in there, Mark, that I do a fair bit of work with Hydrowood, and they're reclaiming all of those species out of Lake Pyman, and they're fully covered by PFC. They're under audit as we speak today. So, yeah, there are options, both terrestrial and reclaimed out of the lake.
Yeah, that's an extremely innovative story of and successful to show that, you know, things aren't necessarily wasted. And yeah, hats off to those guys for doing such a great job in terms of demonstrating that resource hasn't been lost to us, and it's certainly something that is perhaps gaining an iconic status.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, just in the special species, Mark, we still get questions across the Tas Timber website on old growth and whether there is any old growth still milled. What's the certification or the standpoint on that as a forest go in Tasmania?
Well, forestry, Sustainable Timber Tasmania, that manages the largest part of that estate, from them we know, and from the Forests report, which is independently done by the Forest Practices Authority, that 88% by area of all old growth forest in Tasmania is in formal reserves. Of that which remains in production forest areas, a very, very small percent would be in a harvest situation. Often it might be dangerous trees that have to be removed, and there'd be some understory associated with those that would produce some special timber.
Okay, so there's no wholesale
Definitely not
production of older growth, as you say, 88% fully locked up, and the small percentage it is by happenstance or I didn't realise till you just said, as a safety measure.
Yeah, STT, Sustainable Timber Tasmania, has a policy of not clear falling any old growth. So if there are any old growth trees in the area, it's not a clear fall coop. There's also the giant trees policy as well, which protects like large trees. So anything, I think it's 85 meters high, is protected as well, and they have a buffer zone put around them to protect them as well.
Thank you.
Back one. Right. Yeah, so like we were saying, native forest in Tasmania, it is a world-class system, and with the certification that's been verified as sustainable, it's organic forestry, so we've got no chemical inputs to any of that. And native forest is harvested on both private and state-owned or private permanent timber production zone land, or PTPZL as the acronym is. So the private wood estate in Tasmania has been estimated to be around sort of 51 million tonnes. So we're only getting on average about 200,000 tonnes per annum. So it's really only a small fraction of that that's harvested.
And that's across all products. So it's yeah, post poles, domestic peelers, saw logs, and pulpwood.
Yeah, and like we're saying, nearly all saw logs that are harvested are sold as certified in Tasmania. So then, yeah, sustainability. So we're saying, what is sustainability? When certification looks at a forest manager to see that they're sustainable, they look at the elements of sustainability. So there's cultural sustainability, economic, environmental, and social sustainability. So these goals are actually aligned with the UN Sustainability Development Goals. They're not ones that we just thought up. They're traceable back to verifiable sources, and evidence is required for each of the points to make sure that the forest management is actually sustainable over the longer term. In Tasmania too, so Sustainable Timber Tasmania is required to make available 137,000 cubic metres of high quality sawlog. That has come around through a 90-year planning horizon, so a 90-year rotation basically, to ensure that everything that they're looking at is sustainable. That covers one nominal rotation for a standard native forest coop, or it could be, you know, 2 or 3 for a hardwood plantation. And that's the level that's been designed to give under that management regime without reducing the long-term capacity of the forest. Because, like I was saying, private forest doesn't actually harvest that much compared with what's available. So some of the larger managers do a 3-year plan as well. That's for to ensure that the local councils have got advance warning of roading requirements. And that's, yeah, published annually. So, yeah, future issues. So, yeah, native forest harvesting is still a contentious issue. So it sort of remains to be the case. The standards that we look at, the certification standards, are revised every 5 years to ensure that they are current. And we've also got the EUDR, or the European Union Deforestation Regulation, that's going to be coming in at the end of this year, which will provide some challenges, and we're seeing how that one affects the industry going forward.
Does that have the potential to set the bar a bit higher, Eddie?
It does, Mick. It's that requires individual shipments to be identified geographically with a shapefile and verified as not being subject to deforestation. So it will probably be, yeah, it'll be setting the bar for standards going forward, I think. So yeah. So yeah, if you're looking at how to get certification.
Yeah, Wood Connect is a group scheme under the Responsible Wood Certification Scheme, so recognised both by PFC and Responsible Wood. Its roots or its genesis is from a not-for-profit called Fine Timber Tasmania, which held the flag for more than a decade and fully supported the hardwood industry in Tasmania, providing certification through some pretty difficult times. And out of that, my firm, Brooknell Leach, has taken it over, and we've rebranded it as Wood Connect and now provide that service nationally. In Tasmania, all the hardwood sawmills are certified through Wood Connect, and the benefits of a group scheme, which are purposely limited to single site businesses of up to $30 million gross turnover and 100 employees. So it does fit the bill for a lot of companies. And that's providing, the certification to our full industry. The benefit being that the costs of certification are spread across the group, and it's effectively a single fee operation, again, on scale based on turnover. And it's a ready-to-roll system. So it's not off the shelf. It's assisted at each company's individual level. We provide all the support, auditing, and fee paying on behalf of the members. Any questions there, Mick?
Yeah, I have, and I've been part of this scheme, Mark, as you know, and the one thing that I found interesting when we joined was that whatever an individual company does is reflected on the group. So there's a social conscience and rigor and review within the group. I don't know if you'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, well, there's a requirement for mutuality, if you like. So we're only as good as our weakest link. So as effectively the custodians or the coordinators of the group, it's our responsibility to help everyone. So we can work with people that are still in an analog space of working with a carbon copybook, if you like, for their invoices, through to the most sophisticated businesses. If people go beyond the limits of the scheme, then Brook and Leach, our consulting firm, can step in and assist them as well.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, that's us, Mick.
Thank you, guys. I'm hoping that was of some clarification on certification, remembering that this is specific to Tasmania, and the Wood Connect brand, although it runs the whole of the Tasmanian industry, is available Australia-wide and is getting traction Australia-wide. If there's any questions, can we grab them now while the guys are still online?
While we're waiting for any questions to come through, I just wanted to remind everyone that we do have our final webinar coming up next month. So it's on the 7th of May. And we'll be talking about the future of the resource, plantation timber. So I've just popped that link there. If you want to go ahead and register for that next one on May 7th, we'd love to see you next month.
Yeah, can I just echo that, Morgan? Very excited to be
Yes.
talking about transition to plantation. While native will still be part of the package out of Tasmania and always will be. You saw today with horizons of 90 years in planning and constant reviewing. It's a very solid scheme, but the transition for growth to plantation is really exciting, and I think it'll be well worth exploring. We'll have a few experts in from UTAS and other areas to talk about where we're going to in this new process.
We just had a question come through for Eddie. Just a question regarding certification. Is there a requirement for the size of the company body to get certified?
No, is the short answer. We, in our group, we have single person owner operators. So, the artisans right through to, up the upper limits of the standard. So yeah, a couple of $100 a year. We've got light manufacturers, we've got guitar manufacturers, we've got artisans making sort of trinkets out of our special timbers for sale at the airport. Yeah, we've got all sorts of different use, but they're all showing that they're committed to the sustainable use through their certification, and they're all audited every year to make sure that the supply chain is solid.
Yeah, and I think the real message there is check what you're buying and check that it has certification. whether
Correct.
it be FSC or PFC, make sure that if it's coming out of Tasmania, that it is certified, as the largest percentage is. But without that certification, you have no guarantees. So this is why, you know, we as a piece of really social license, really push through Tas Timber Promotion Board the use of the certified product.
Excellent. Yeah, anyone can hop online and check the validity of a certificate, either through the certification body or directly through Responsible Wood, and even going to the international database of PEFC. So that'll bring it up, and you'll see the street cred, if you like.
Thanks, Mark. All right, Morgan, if there's no other questions, and I think the simple answer was, no, you don't have to be. Yes, we want you to be, and we only deal with certified companies.
Correct. Yep.
Great. If there's not any other questions then for today, I think we'll go ahead and close things out. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you to Mick, Mark, and Eddie for popping on and giving us a really great explanation of that certification and sustainability today.
Thanks, Morgan.
Thanks, Mick and Morgan. Thanks for attendees.
Thank you very much, guys.
Everybody,
Bye.
we'll see you on the 7th.
Bye.